Wow, okay, hi. Hi, I know it's been a long time since I've sat down and done a main channel full-length video, and I'm sorry about that. I was just feeling pretty uninspired, to be completely honest, a little bit uncreative, and I'm finally ready to be back. So, here we are. But welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. Hi, my name is Alyssa. I make videos about fashion mostly, but sometimes, like this video, I like to just sit and run my mouth because I have thoughts. Which is dangerous sometimes, yes, but sometimes I have thoughts, sometimes I think. Now today I wanted to talk about the resurgence of the Victoria's Secret fashion show that happened at the end of last year. It was October 2024. And I know, again, this happened a few months ago, but it's still something I wanted to talk about that I haven't seen a lot of other people talk about because it is still current and it's still relevant and it's still something that we are living through right now and that we are going to see into the future. And I am dressed for the occasion. I am wearing one of my best lingerie sets. I am wearing pants, so don't get any wrong ideas here. But this could also just be a really bad excuse to wear lingerie on the internet. But you know what? Here we are. This was the first live, full production, studio audience runway show they put on since 2018. And it's another sign that thin is in, that thin has always been in, that the body positivity and the body inclusivity movement we saw for the past maybe like 5 to 7 years is slowly but surely fading away. Why that's happening and what that means. So let's get into it. Also, sorry if I sound a little bit bunged up and stuffy in this video right now. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold, which seems like this has been the 10th time I've gotten sick in the past 4 months. But isn't that just flu season for you? But before we get into talking about the actual fashion show itself, I want to, as I like to do, take it back to the beginning, take it back to the start, and give a little bit of a history behind Victoria's Secret itself as a brand. Victoria's Secret was actually founded by a man named Roy Raymond, along with his wife, Ray Raymond, Roy and Ray, in 1977 when he was trying to buy lingerie, like sexy lingerie, not ugly lingerie. Although, is there such thing as ugly lingerie? I don't know. I digress. But he was trying to buy some lingerie for his wife. He found in his shopping experience out of place, a little bit judged, and he felt uncomfortable. And so he wanted to create a more comfortable lingerie shopping experience for men during a time when really all that was around was more pragmatic underwear options like Fruit of the Loom, Hanes, Jockey. And so Roy basically created an entire lingerie empire for the male experience. How typical is that? But anyway, they ended up naming their new brand Victoria's Secret, Victoria after Victorian England, to evoke a sense of propriety, a sense of regality, if you will, and secret because the undergarments you wear underneath your clothes are the secret, Victoria's Secret. That's how the name was born. They opened up their first actual brick and mortar store in Palo Alto in 1977, and they actually did really well. They grossed $500,000 in their first year, which adjusted for inflation today would be about $2.7 million. And with that, they were then able to expand into 4 more brick and mortar stores and a mail order catalog service. After a few years, they decided to sell their brand, their 5 stores, their catalog service. They decided to sell all of it to a man named Les Wexner in 1982 for $1 million, who then came in and kind of revamped the entire brand as a whole. He wanted to gear the brand more towards the female customers, which it should have been all along, in my opinion. And they also, during their time, introduced other products. They introduced a fragrance line in 1991. They introduced a cosmetics line in 1998, etc. Now, I want to sidestep for a second and talk about the catalog, the Victoria's Secret catalog itself, because this was a huge part of the brand, a huge part of the company as a whole for a very, very long time. It was a huge source of revenue. It was a huge source of customer attention and a great way for them to spread brand awareness. Early on in the catalog days, they actually even listed a fake UK address on the catalog as their headquarters instead of their real Ohio address as their headquarters to elicit more of a sense of that like European luxury vibe. Now, as I mentioned, the catalog itself started around 1977, 1978, and a few years later, by 1982, they were already a financial success. They were already influencing the way other catalogs presented themselves. They wanted to revamp their images to be more romantic and sensual, but tasteful, whatever that means. And by 1987, it was one of the best-selling catalogs of the time. Now, fast forward, what is that, 13 years to 2000? Do the math. What is that, 13 years? Yeah. The newly appointed chief executive of Victoria's Secret, Sharon Jester Turner, rebranded the catalog and revamped it to be more upscale and less hooker, more Vogue, less Playboy, because sales were lagging, and the rebrand of the catalog worked. They saw an increase in sales, but then by 2016, they decided to discontinue the catalog entirely because of declining sales, which makes sense. By that time, online shopping has been around for years, and people don't really... Does anyone do mail order catalog services anymore? I have no idea. But to get back to Victoria's Secret, the brand as a whole, by 2006, there were 1,000 stores nationwide, and they were doing incredibly well for themselves at this time. Their sales made up about 1/3 of the entire intimate lingerie industry. So they dominated 1/3 as one single brand of the entire industry they were in. Crazy. But then fast forward 10 years to 2016, which coincides with the death of the mail order catalog. They finally saw sales slowing down, and by 2017, they actually saw sales declining. Many executives started to step down, including the previously mentioned chief executive Sharon Jester Turner and then CEO Jan Singer. Now, it was around this time in 2018 when then Chief Marketing Officer Ed Razek decided to make some very controversial statements. And I remember when this happened at the time that this happened. And even then I thought, wow, homie really decided to say those things out loud, publicly, for it to live forever on the internet and in print. Okay.
My one thing was I went into the Disney Channel building and I sat down with the president of Disney Channel and I said, I want to make history. And that's what this is.
But he famously, or I suppose infamously, said in a Vogue interview that the Victoria's Secret fashion show does not cast transsexuals or plus-size models because the show is a fantasy. The underlying assumption, of course, being that transsexuals and plus-size models don't fulfill the fantasy. The fantasy. Air quotes, may I add.
Plans. She has some work thing for him to do. Wait, why'd you just make air quotes? No, those weren't air quotes. I was just practicing what I want to do to her eyes.
People did not like that comment. That's an understatement. They hated that comment so much that stocks declined by 40% in a single year. They closed 53 stores in 2019, and they decided to have no more fashion show. Good job, Ed. Okay, I'm back. I had to change my battery. Okay, but like I said, former CMO Ed Razek decided to resign in 2019 along with one of the other executive members of the team. Things were not going very well for Victoria's Secret around the end of the 2010s. Let me tell ya. In my opinion, and I'm going off script here, I think they were flying a little too close to the sun. I think because the brand was doing so well at the time, they thought they were invincible. But I don't think it's any coincidence that everything started to collapse for them around this time. And I will get into that. So for the next couple of years after that, Victoria's Secret, underwent a major rebrand. They decided to get all new ownership, all new management, all new spokespeople or spokeswomen, Priyanka Chopra being one of them, actually, which is kind of a surprise to me, I'm not gonna lie. But they were, in my opinion, trying to do a lot of damage control as well as trying to reframe themselves in the eyes of the public. And it worked. The major rebrand worked. They saw an increase in sales. So don't get me wrong, the campaign worked. But it didn't last very long. By 2023, they kind of scaled back the rebrand and they reverted back to kind of how the brand originally was, which then led to the rebirth of the fashion show. Why does that word sound weird to me? To the rebirth of the fashion show. Yes. And again, I don't think it's any coincidence that the scaling back of the rebrand, the resurgence of the fashion show, and the rise of the body positivity movement in the mid to late 2010s all happened around the same time. But this then segues us into our next topic, the actual crux of this video, the meat, if you will, the Victoria's Secret fashion show itself.
It's the sexiest night on television. Brought to you in part by Victoria's Secret. The glamour's back.
I'm just here to enjoy the whole show, the production. I hear it's over the top. I like that.
Some of the most beautiful, elegant women will get out on that runway. What do you think?
We have Ed Sheeran and Ariana Grande and Taylor Swift and Hosier, and I'm so excited to see all these bands and it's so fun.
Let's talk about the rise and fall of the Victoria's Secret fashion show. The first actual fashion show was in 1995 in New York City. It was a small affair. It was used as a promotional event to showcase their signature products. They had their typical bras and underwears, yes, but they also showcased their nightgowns, their satin slips, their robes. It was a very elegant and modest affair. It was more of an actual fashion show versus a fashion spectacle. That's what I have dubbed the monster that the fashion show became at its height. And don't get me wrong, at its height, the fashion show was huge. I remember, not that I ever watched it myself, because I wasn't very interested, to be completely honest. I didn't shop at Victoria's Secret. I had an Asian mother who didn't let me shop there. But I remember my friends or acquaintances always talking about the show when it was around that time of year. Are you gonna watch the show? I'm so excited to watch the show. I'm gonna watch it with my mom and we're gonna get our snacks and we're gonna watch the show together. Oh, did you watch the show yesterday? All that stuff. So it was huge and I was aware of it and I remember seeing pictures and videos online and it was indeed a spectacle. And again, the fashion show itself was huge. For models, it propelled new careers, it solidified existing careers. It was, again, at its height, in its heyday, pretty much every model's dream to be a part of the show.
Yeah, gorgeous. What are you doing on November 9th and 10th?
I don't know.
Why don't you come join us?
A lot of the models we know today were a part of the show in the past, making their debuts at different times. Let's see, in the 90s, we had Tyra Banks, Heidi Klum, Giselle Bunchen, and Claudia Schiffer making their debuts in the, the aughts, the early 2000s, We have the names that I started to know and hear at the time, like Miranda Kerr, Alessandra Ambrosia, Adriana Lima, Bahati Prinsloo, Quandis, Candace Swanepoel. In the early 2010s, Karlie Kloss made her debut. Barbara Palvin made her debut, actually. She's married to Cole Sprouse, and this was kind of a surprise. A little bit of a side note. I thought she made her debut later on, but she was a Victoria's Secret girl before any of the rest of them. The rest of them being in the later 2010s. Gigi Hadid, Bella Hadid, Kendall Jenner. And the Victoria's Secret fashion show being its own machine, like it was its own entire production. There were staples of the show, one of them being the angel wings. You could either be a model in the show, or you could rise to the top and get the status of being an actual angel and wearing angel wings. And I'm saying wings in air quotes. I'm using that term very loosely. It was really just any like back fixture to put on the backs of the models that could be really any shape or size that fit the theme of the show that year. But it was a very high status to achieve. Not everyone was an angel. Not every model walking down the runway had angel wings. It was a status symbol within the show for sure. And Tyra Banks was actually the first angel in 1998. One of the other staples of the show was the fantasy bra. It was, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like this very like luxurious, bedazzled bra that was bedazzled with actual gemstones, like actual diamonds and rubies and sapphires, like millions of dollars worth of real jewels. And again, I say spectacle. This was all part of the spectacle, because who is buying these? Who is buying this singular bra and then also wearing it? You know what I'm saying? Are you going to wear a jewel encrusted? I mean, you might wear a jewel encrusted bra, but I have no idea. Do what you want to do. But one was made every year. They debuted in 1996 with Claudia Schiffer being the first one to ever wear a fantasy bra. And they ranged in like price or value. I don't want to say price because I don't know if these were actually ever sold, but they ranged in value. I think during the height of the show, the bras were worth like $10 million. The most expensive one was $15 million. That was worn by Gisele Bundchen in 2000, called the Red Hot Fantasy Bra.
Oh, okay. So this is when I was 19 years old and I signed my contract with Victoria's Secret. And this was the ruby bra. It was like the $50 million bra. I did have securities following me everywhere. Everywhere I went, there was like these two guys like making sure. I was like, guys, I'm not doing anything with it. It's pretty funny.
The things Victoria's Secret did. Saying this stuff out loud, I realize how insane it is.
It was very, very heavy. Lucky I was 19, so so it was all fine to hold all that weight, but it was a heavy bra.
But yeah, the fantasy bra, each yearly fantasy bra, was just another part of the spectacle. It was a way for designers to showcase their talents, don't get me wrong, but then it was also a way for Victoria's Secret to showcase how much money they have. Another one of the staples of a Victoria's Secret fashion show is a musical performance. The first musical performance wasn't actually until 2002 when Destiny's Child performed, but they then paved the way for there to be a musical performance at every show, for it to become a staple of the show. We have had some pretty huge names perform at previous fashion shows. We've had Taylor Swift, Ariana Grande, The Weeknd, Bruno Mars. I think, was it even Adam Levine? Maroon 5, did he perform at the Victoria's Secret fashion show too? I think so. I'm gonna have to fact check myself on that one. But then, all good things must come to an end, and the show was canceled in 2019, or I suppose 2018. 2018 was the last year they did the show, and 2019 was the first year there was no show due to criticisms in the lack of inclusivity, the lack of body diversity within the show. This coincided with the rise of the body positivity movement, like I mentioned earlier, which was around the mid-2010s, I would say. That's when the movement really took off. But this brings us back to present day, or more rather 2023, when we saw their first fashion show in 5 years. It was a modified version. It was all online. It was all streamed. They filmed in multiple locations like Barcelona, Lagos, London, Tokyo, Bogota, Colombia. So it was a very international affair, but it was their first like dipping their toe in the water, testing out the water's return to a fashion show. But then the next year, last year, 2024, they decided to come back with the show in its entirety, like an actual live show with a studio audience.
Are back. It's the Victoria's Secret Fashion Show 2024. The iconic global runway show returns. And we are live from New York City.
It was a little bit more of a tame show. Again, I think it was their version of dipping another toe in the water. It wasn't the full-scale production we have seen back in their heyday. Maybe because they're still testing the waters, maybe because they don't want to invest that much money into the show yet, maybe they don't have the money to invest in the show yet, but it was definitely a smaller affair. You can definitely see the difference between this 2024 show compared to maybe like their 2016 show. But that didn't stop them from trying to pull out as many stops as they could. They brought out all well-known models. Let me just run through the list here. We had Adriana Lima coming back. We had Bella Hadid, Barbara Palvin, Bahati Prinsloo, Carla Bruni, Joan Smalls. We got Kate Moss back on the runway. We got Tyra Banks back on the runway. She closed out the show. This was her first show in 20 years. That's incredible. We had Vittoria Ceretti. I'm saying that in the Italian accent. And then we had Ashley Graham and Paloma Alcesser, who are both plus size models. Now, this brings me back to the point of the scaling back of the rebrand that they did. Do you see how all of the points are connecting here? There was a noticeable lack of body diversity in the model cast. It looked a lot more like their shows from back in the day and a less like the rebrand they attempted in the interim between their shows. You know what I'm saying? And again, I say that there is no coincidence that the lack of body diversity within the show, that there are only a handful, if that, of plus size models is happening around the same time that we are seeing the decline in the body positivity movement as a whole. There is no coincidence.
Coincidence? I think not!
And this leads me into the main point of this video, my thesis, if you will, my arguing point. My arguing point being that thin was always in. Thin was never out. We saw the rise of the body positivity movement in the mid-2010s, like I mentioned. We saw Ashley Graham's career really take off. She was the first plus-size model to get on the cover of Sports Illustrated in 2015. And we saw Rihanna's Savage by Fenty debut runway show in 2018, which was the antithesis, the complete opposite to the Victoria's Secret fashion show. It was incredibly well received. She had a very diverse cast in terms of like models of color and models of different sizes. And again, no coincidence, because there are no coincidences in this world, that this came at a time and was very well received at a time when Victoria's Secret saw the death of their own fashion show. But as we fast forward again to present day, to a few years ago, to maybe like the end of 2022, we started to see the rise of like 90s era model thinness. We saw Ozempic flood the market and other weight loss drugs in 2021. And we saw the shift of what was the trending body type, because that's a thing. And I will get into that, how body types are always trending, how the trend of what is in for body types is always changing. But the signs were everywhere. The Kardashians, who are kind of like the paradigm for what is the current trending body type. They are the champions for setting the beauty standard. We saw them during the height of the body positivity movement with accusations of getting BBLs, of filling out their figures. But then as we saw that movement decline, we saw them losing all of their weight. Kim Kardashian famously lost, like 16 pounds for the 2022 Met Gala.
You look very skinny. I will say that Kendall and Kylie, not that I'm trying to out them, but they did text me and say that they were a little concerned for you because you're really skinny. And I said, I think she's a bit stressed.
And Kendall said it, the model.
Kendall said it.
I know she got excited.
Oh my God,
She's like, stop, people are worried about me.
We saw Adele lose weight. We saw Lizzo lose weight. We saw Rebel Wilson lose weight. So we would see in media these celebrities who were previously known for being members of the plus size community start to thin out, start to lose the weight. And again, this is all happening at the same time. We're seeing the decline of the body positivity movement. We are seeing the rise of thin being in again, and how celebrities themselves are responding to that, and how they are kind of setting the stage for everyone else to then follow suit, basically.
I know what you've done to me. I'm too fat. You're not fat.
Google searches for the term heroin chic peaked in November of 2022, which coincides with the tail end of the Y2K movement. And what happened around Y2K and the late 90s? People being thin, people being skinny.
Wikipedia defines heroin chic as a style popularized in early 1990s fashion and characterized by pale skin, dark circles underneath the eyes, emaciated features, androgyny, and stringy hair, all traits associated with abuse of heroin or other drugs.
We also saw at the Berlin Fashion Show last year in 2024 a very controversial shirt that said, "I heart Ozempic" by the brand Namilia. We would even further see the decline of the number of plus size models we would see walking the runway of these fashion shows. They peaked in 2020, but like I mentioned, even in the 2024 Victoria's Secret fashion show, we didn't see that many. We saw maybe half a handful. Plus size models have been expressing their worry about not being able to book as many shows as in previous years. They're talking about how shows don't want to cast them anymore. The trend of body diversity is over for these fashion companies. They aren't making any money off of the body positivity movement, and so they are not interested in casting these models anymore. And again, I say, companies doing all of these things before, it was them just trying to jump on the bandwagon. It was them just trying to monetize and capitalize on this movement. It was them just trying to It was them just trying to virtue signal to us that they are with the times, that they care, but they don't because they haven't been doing it anymore. We have also kind of scarily seen an increase in the number of posts on social media about eating disorders, which further drives home the points that thin is in. Again, thin is back in. And we have accounts targeted mostly for young girls, might I add, posting pictures for thinspiration. Instagram is trying to crack down on these posts and these accounts, but as the internet is a nebulous being, they can be shut down, but then another account pops up doing the same exact thing. Now, as I was creating the outline for this video, as I was typing out all of my thoughts and all of my information, the one question that I kept on circling back to was why? And essentially, why am I making this video? What is the point of this video? Why has the body positivity movement died, basically? Why have we seen an increase or a rise again in the trend? Because it is a trend, and this is what I have been circling back to, the trend of thin being in. And that was the ultimate question I wanted to answer. Ultimately, the reason I was able to come up with was the shift back to traditionalism, the shift in culture back to conservatism, which we have seen and that has been happening silently, slowly for years now. Again, this didn't happen overnight. We saw the rise of the body positivity movement in the mid 2010s, didn't last very long, and it was slowly but surely on the decline for another several years after that. And the signs, like I mentioned, have been there. We have seen very many aesthetics come and go, don't get me wrong, but among those, some of the major ones were ones like clean girl, ones like old money, or stealth wealth, or the rise of trad wife content that we've seen online. And what type of person comes to mind when you think of that kind of aesthetic? It's going to be a skinny person, right? It's going to be a skinny white person, but it's going to be a skinny person. And so we're seeing the trend come back to thin. And I say trend, and this is where I start getting into the trend cycles of body shapes and body types. This is nothing new. The fact that body shapes and body types have always been trends which are cyclical. I remember learning in school, and I don't know when I learned this. It's kind of just one of those things that has always been in my brain. But I remember learning that way back in the day, a long time ago, being fat was attractive because being fat or plus size or curvy, whatever you want to call it, was a sign of being wealthy. You were prosperous enough to not have to afford to go out and do physical labor. You were prosperous enough to be able to afford food. That was seen as being wealthy, and so that was seen as being attractive. But then as I was doing my research for this video, I started wondering, okay, so if that was the standard back in the day, like way back in the day, what shifted and when? What caused the shift in the mindset of fat no longer being attractive? And by the 1900s, we started seeing a lot of improvements in technology around farming that helped eradicate famine and food scarcity in developed worlds. And so it led to a general increase in obesity as more food became available to more people. And there was new research into the negative health consequences of obesity. But I also think there's a shift in mindset around scarcity and socioeconomic status. When things are scarce and rare, they are more valuable. So scarcity is for the rich and elites. And when food is no longer scarce and everyone has access to food, it no longer is a sign of wealth. And I'm sure you're thinking, in this economy, what kind of food are we affording in this economy? But let me tell you, there is a difference still in the amount of food we have available to us and that we are able to afford now compared to like the 1800s. You know what I'm saying? So there's a difference. So when there is no longer food scarcity to create a division between the rich and the poor, then being fat is no longer seen as being attractive because everyone can be fat, because everyone can eat the same amounts and types of food. Do you see what I'm saying? But I want to go back and reiterate the trend cycle of body shapes and body types and body configurations has always been trends. It has always been trending. That is nothing new for centuries, not even decades, but centuries now. That has always been the case. So I honestly don't think anything is going to change. Even culturally, societally, we see body modifications as signs of beauty. We have seen feet binding in China. We have seen some societies in Asia and Africa wear neck rings to give the illusion of elongated necks. And while the amount of fat someone has on the body is different than feet binding or neck rings, it is still within the same general sphere, the same general world as your body shape and your body type and the way your body looks as being seen as attractive or not attractive. Now, I really don't have an actual conclusion for this video, so I guess I would just like to leave you with this. Barriers around the way we talk about women's bodies, about the way we perceive plus size, the way we perceive curviness have been broken. I think the body positivity movement, for as short as it ended up lasting, I think it really paved the way for us to go into this new trend of thinness with our eyes open to the realities of what it's like for bodies to always be trends. Be kind to yourself, because you were only given one body that looks the way it looks for a reason, and there's only so much you can do to change it to fit whatever is the beauty standard at that time. But don't fall into their traps. Don't play their games. You don't have to play if you don't want to. Be kind to yourself. Be aware of what's happening. Take yourself out of social media if you have to unaware yourself, to ignore the noise, because that's really all we can do. Because all of this stuff only lives on the internet. None of this stuff is happening out in real life. I can't stress that enough. But yeah, I'm done talking now. I've been talking for so long. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. And I'll see you guys again in another video. Bye.